and welcome to today's webinar. I'm the speaker today, Denise Webster. I head up at SCS, our food safety training and consulting side of our business. Been in the food industry for a little over 28 years and all things food safety and quality. I'm also one of our lead trainers for FSMA and industry leading topics, as well as things like regulatory compliance for dietary supplements and labeling. I also lead a team of experts as well. So today's topic, and thank you guys all for joining us live. I think you will definitely appreciate what we have queued up for today, especially as the year draws closer to the end. It's that ideal time to reflect on your food safety journey, personally, professionally, and your company as a whole, and just the overall performance of your systems. By evaluating key learnings and challenges from the past year, both within our own business and others, we can hopefully position ourselves to be more proactive, effective, and really more resilient in driving success into 2026. Hopefully you will see through this, we're going to look at how to kind of modernize our food safety systems, drive that continuous improvement mindset, and we'll close with some inspiration on how you can take your food safety culture programs to the next level. We'll first start off by just opening up our poll. Would just want to give you guys a little check-in. How would you describe, as of today, your readiness for 2026? So, poll should be open. Let me just make sure. Launch. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we have very confident you're fully prepared, ready to go. You're ready to go on that tropical vacation because you're in good hands. Maybe there's still a bit to do. You have some continuous improvement initiatives that either you need to close for 2025 or get going for 2026. Maybe why you joined today is there are gaps in your program and you need kind of that fresh look into what could you improve, change for 2026. And then, of course, we all are struggling at some point, but perhaps you're feeling the impact a little bit more greater. I'll give you just a few more seconds to everybody to get their vote in. All right, we'll go ahead and end the poll for you. And I'll share the results. You guys can see where everybody is kind of at. So majority of you guys are mostly confident at 64%. That's great. Obviously, we've had to be, more resilient with our continuous improvement initiatives to stay, ahead of what's going on, which we'll talk about today. And then we even have 14 of you are very confident, prepared, proactive. So I always develop these webinars really for those that feel they're prepared and proactive. I try to push the boundaries a little bit of things that you might not have thought of. So would love your feedback if we're able to achieve that today. And then those that are 22% somewhat confident, you guys are making progress, you have some gaps, and same, I hope you get some value out of today's webinar for sure. And we have 0% struggling, which is great to hear. All right, closing that poll. So just kind of taking a reflection on 2025 thus far when it comes to food safety before we kind of move into 2026. It truly has been evolving rapidly, more so I feel than most years. Sites have had to stay ahead of emerging risk. Such as there's been a lot of outbreaks this year, food safety incidents, unfortunately, but also technology has continued to increase and we're having to adapt. Regulatory shifts, some of those impacts in the regulatory that we've seen, allergen changes at the start of the year with the removal of coconut and having to really take a look at our allergen management program and determine if those may contain statements are really necessary. removal and reassessing the dyes or artificial colors, and some of you might have quite a bit of R&D shift that you have to adjust this year. Heavy metal limits for infant and toddler foods. So not even only just looking at those food categories, but how does that apply into the rest of what we're producing? Extension of the traceability rule, which I know we all breathed a sigh of relief on that, but we definitely have to continue that motivation to focus the team to be prepared when those 30 months extension are up. Although FDA and USDA have had these shifts in priorities that were set, they largely, though, remain the same. We still have that human foods program. All the priorities associated fall into those three main buckets: microbial, chemical safety, and nutrition. And so largely, we're still heading in that same direction we anticipated a year ago. There's other areas that we've seen, geopolitical tension, of course, trade disruptions, tariffs being the big word of this year, even weather events that you may or may not have heard of or impacted you directly. There's drought that's been affecting coffee, for example. And just overall complicating ingredient sourcing. It's increased prices. It has required more oversight by the food industry to adjust and adapt. Shockingly, the food prices have actually been reported to have outpaced inflation by 3.2%. So that alone is a little bit disheartening, because ultimately it does lead to companies and consumers having to make those adjustments. People think about those food prices at the store shelf, but that goes all the way back to the raw materials that you purchase and the farms. And how do we then adapt and make sure that things like the tariffs and food prices aren't impacting food safety or quality programs? So we have to really stay alert to what's going on in the news. We can't just kind of stay focused on what's going on in our four manufacturing walls. Another area that's just kind of fun to talk about is the consumer changes. We have Gen Z, which they're born between 1997 and 2012. I have two Gen Zs, so I live and breathe this. They are digital natives. They grew up with smartphones and social media. I can attest to that. They're characterized by being more social and health conscious. So that's driving us to be more transparent, have more ethical sourcing. But at the same time, we have these concerns with tariffs and food prices. So how do we meet those consumer demands without impacting our food safety and quality at the same time? So each year presents kind of new and unique challenges. And overall, we do need to be prepared and be more proactive. And we can use things like AI and be able to not just use it, but improve upon it and be able to adapt. And I'm going to speak more about the AI in today's webinar. So I thought it'd be a good idea just to let you guys know, if you haven't heard already, which I'm sure you have, the Global Food Safety Initiative benchmark requirements have been under review and discussion with all the CPOs, the certification program owners like SQF and BRC, and I've just been to all their conferences this year, and everyone's really, anxious about what are the changes that are going to be to SQF 10 and when's BRC 10 going to come out. It's all on the precipice of these benchmarking requirements. There were some challenges to some policies that were set around auditor selection, some approaches to the requirements that were not necessarily aligned with. And so to work those out, GFSI has extended the run time of the standards to be able to match those requirements or to submit for their approval through to March 2026. This has impacted SQF 10 launch, although they haven't stated when exactly. I would have to imagine that the audit date of what they originally said, April 2026, for the edition 10 is going to be pushed out as well, respectively. And I would encourage you guys to sign up for next year's conference if your site is SQF certified, because we'll learn a lot more. What can you do now while they're trying to figure things out? Well, you can really start focusing on improving your HACCP plan, making sure not only does it match the most current edition of the Codex, and if you haven't downloaded the Codex in the past couple years, I would encourage you to go just put in Codex Principles of Food Hygiene. There's a whole new guide. Even from the 2022 drop, they put the decision tree back in. I would encourage you guys as a HACCP team to review that, assess it, and see if there's any improvements to your program. Also, if you're FDA FSMA compliant, that is another component which we'll talk about later. And the other focus areas will be on leadership commitment. It's not going to be just enough anymore to check the box and say you've met monthly and you've met annually, but now it needs to be ramped up with more food safety culture components, change management, really looking at the data, not just kind of superficially checking the box. So there's going to be more in that category. Also, just systematic improvement of the validation and verification programs, which is really the focus that I've put forth for today's webinar. Give you guys some new ideas on how to really challenge those key programs in your food safety system. Also, no surprise, improving traceability, record reviews, anticipating even some environmental monitoring approaches as well. Okay, so more to come. A third component that you may want to look at is what's called maturity modeling. This is something at SCS we've been doing a lot more for clients over the past couple years. We're really starting to incorporate looking at companies' processes and strategies with an organizational development in mind. Maturity modeling is something that's been out there for a while, but not a lot of people know it exists or why. It's not a scoring system per se. It's just a rating that kind of gives you an indication of where your business, your program, or whatever you're trying to look at through that lens is within its maturity, and how far do you want to take it. A lot of people think, oh, you want to get to stage 5 optimized. Not in every program is it necessary. But on some things, you may need to look at where you're at. So just briefly, stage 1 is that reactive stage where everything's on fire. We don't really have any documented processes. Everything's kind of ad hoc. Largely, I would say if you're GFSI certified, that's not the case, but you might have certain programs you feel more reactive, and those are probably more defined, where you have a structure, you have a policy or procedure, and there's some proactive response, but there are definitely areas to improve and to keep kind of moving through that maturity model to a controlled state. This is where you have improved communication, training and coordination across your network of departments or in that particular project team. You've got defined roles, and really this is a sweet spot being in control, but it also can be that complacent. You feel a little complacent in that control. Things aren't moving forward, or they're maybe not at that next stage, which is integrated. Integrated is really where you become a much more risk-based decision-making culture. Your risks are uncovered proactively, they're mitigated proactively. You're starting to get confidence to really challenge and push the boundaries. And then stage 5, as you can imagine, is the maturest model. It's fully embedded, well-oiled machine. You foster a culture of compliance. You set clear policy and direction proactively. You have continuous improvement plans. So something to take a look at, and feel free to reach out to us if you want more information about maturity modeling. I've given you guys a few key questions to assess if you want to just take one of your programs, say our food safety plan. Is it reactive or proactive? Is it clearly defined roles and responsibilities? What kind of tools and systems? Is everything paper-based? How can it become more integrated or optimized? Have we really reduced the risk? And is the team just checking the box, like running the, metal detection checks or X-ray checks, but not really understanding why? Or are we looking at the age of those units? Are they optimized? Are they doing what we need? And are we only relying on them for foreign material? Are we doing other things? There's been quite a few foreign material recalls this year. And I have just a slide briefly on that to kind of challenge our thoughts and not just focus on those microbial risk, where we tend to do with some of our food safety programs for obvious reasons. So let's take a look at some of those food safety systems and how can we kind of shake them up a little bit. So I'm starting with the supplier approval. Many of you may already use it, but the FDA has the data dashboard, which if a site has ever been audited by the FDA, which they do over 12,000 domestic inspections and 3,000 foreign inspections in 90 countries every year, they'll be in that database, and you'll be able to see if they have had any 483 issues, if they've had any recalls. It's a great resource, free and available for use. Also, looking at the supplier's audit program. So not just relying on that certificate or their non-conformance report, but double checking that those suppliers haven't lost their certification within the time that you were given the results and the time in which you're doing your supplier assessment. There is the SQF and BRC databases that you can check and just do that extra work to make sure nothing has shifted. Also, in that supplier approval program, we really need to look at improving those questionnaires and our scoring. We tend to have a lot of generic check boxes, yes or no answers. A lot of those questions even repeat the GFSI type questions that could be easily identified through the third-party audit report that you get. How can we elevate those? And obviously I do have a few examples here for you to help you kind of think about this in a different way. Also, are we just having them answer or provide some policy or procedure for evaluation? Are we incorporating risk-based questions with scoring even, giving us that barometer to say, are they approved? Are they not approved? Maybe they're conditionally approved until you get more identification of how they've resolved an issue. So if a site has had a allergen recall, for example, it might have not affected your product that you purchased from them, but it'd be worth assessing, well, what went wrong? How could this, potentially be a systemic issue that could impact your raw material you purchase or your finished product that you have a co-packer produce for you. We need to be able to understand, eliminate, or just reduce the risk to those specific products by doing more effective integrated supplier approvals versus that checkbox kind of approach, or every year just saying, oh, well, we haven't had any issues, right? We've got to document those and really be able to challenge the way in which we are assessing our suppliers. So as you know, AI is a powerful tool, but with any tool, you need knowledge on how to use it, what can go wrong, and it may require more than one tool to get the job done. This year, I've really started going down the rabbit hole of testing out the capabilities and limitations of AI. And in the chat box, if any of you, not the question box, but the chat box, if any of you have used AI successfully, would love to hear about just some examples that you've used. And I'm going to show you one here in just a minute. ultimately, or traditionally, we've relied on scientific, technical, and regulatory information to conduct our program writing or validation, determine verification. But we can use AI to provide us some more ideas and insights on how to elevate our programs, how to develop and challenge them. I've used AI to write quizzes, refine statements that just weren't sounding right that day, to provide resources. Although there are pitfalls, of course, with any technology, specifically with AI, the references, and being able to use what they've provided, you have to check that they're from reputable websites. I've had marketers use it and tell me that something is an excellent source of fiber from, some AI search, but it was from the reputable website was not there. It was from someone's blog website where they had it wrong. And of course, AI is just picking up all that information that's available. It's not vetting that it's accurate. That's what we have to do. Sometimes too, it is incorrect conclusions. You're like, well, that's not right, or assumptions. So with anything, it's a great tool. I would encourage you guys, if you haven't, start using it on little things, test it out, but definitely verify those resources. So let's give it a try. Here we can see I put in a question. How can the food industry improve supplier approval questionnaires so they actually assess real risk for food safety, right? So you can give it very defined information. You can refine that information as it goes. It takes your prior question and kind of builds on it and feeds on it further. You can ask it more specific questions. You can ask it broader questions and keep diving down from there. So here's what it gave after a few refinements on my part. It gave us some risk indicators. I asked it to give me a scoring criteria that's weighted, and it did that as well. You can see some of the risk indicators, regulatory compliance, right? Checking that FDA website, the USDA website, or if it's, international supplier. Product vulnerability, right? We do this for our food safety plans. So we need to do that at that product level, whether it be microbial risk, chemical, physical, economic, motivated food fraud. Audit performance, we've got, of course, our third-party audit scores, our frequency of the audits and corrective actions taken. Non-conformances, have you had any issues with that supplier this year, or have they had external issues that might have to be incorporated in this weighted average? Incident management, their speed or transparency in how they've responded in the event of a complaint or potential contamination event or even recall. And then lastly, the robustness of their food safety program. How good is their HACCP program or their traceability? Do you run a traceability exercise with suppliers as well? You might want to dig into specific preventive controls or allergen maybe training topics if they have allergen risk within their facility. So I thought that this was quite a good output. You could change the weighting of the scores, but at least it gave us some real good key risk indicators quickly. We didn't have to spend a day trying to come up with this. And that's the true beauty I found of AI. It has helped me reduce the time to get to something that looks better, to give me some ideas and things I might be missing that day. And then you have the output here on the right, which is, okay, what would be then the scoring and how would we assess the risk? And we've got low to critical. And what would be the action that we would take, right? So if we do score someone at 60 to 79, maybe they're approved, but we need to enhance our oversight. If they've scored low, maybe they're conditionally approved with actionable steps or your own visit. That would trigger you having to assess it further and not just rely on the data that you have, all the way to not approved. So you can set those risk ratings or bands. I also asked it to provide me a case study, which you could put your own product in. In this case, I chose ready-to-eat meals and high-risk, perishable product. And it gave me kind of the risk-based scoring framework here to the right. You can see that it's then taken that information and turned it into not only a score, but a color coding approach as well. You can just keep refining it as you go. Oh, sorry. So just one more on that. You can see the scoring criteria change too. So like the robustness of the food safety program specifically looks at the HACCP for the ready to eat, environmental monitoring, sanitation verification, employee hygiene. So you can see it altered the scoring criteria with focused risk related to ready to eat meals. Okay. So the next topic is crisis management. I know this is one that I've struggled with over the years. How do I really assess and push our crisis management plan to really ensure that we are ready? Upon research, I realized that there actually is a lot of free available resources that we can be taking advantage of. There are governmental websites that I'm going to show you some here, both at the federal and state level for the risk associated. One of those is the Great Shakeout, which actually is coming today. And that Great Shakeout has resources available for the various regions: California, Arizona, Colorado, Hawaii, Texas, Washington, those areas that have that risk of earthquake. OSHA has one for tornadoes. There's smartphone applications, and you can communicate to your staff, your team at the food facilities, that they have these apps available for them to download. Second key thing that you want to do is really challenge the crisis management program through learning opportunities. Use these tools to assess risk. Upskill your team on what to do in the event of. Where is that first aid kit? What emergency creates a different outcome? Fire, yes, is one thing, but if there is an earthquake or a tornado, how do we manage those differently? So having those readiness tests, really making sure the team, we're challenging it through the team understanding what and how and where to go, and giving them the appropriate resources. Here we can see FEMA actually has a national risk index where you can click on the risk. You can look at your specific area. In this particular case, I selected hurricane. And you can see their relative not applicable areas. So you can rule out that in your risk assessment for crisis management based on the National Risk Index, the FEMA, that hurricane is not a risk that we have to cover in our crisis management plan. Conversely, in areas like Florida or around the Gulf and the East Coast, we would want to have hurricane. And we can see that it's relatively high to very high in those particular regions. You can drill down right as well into your particular area of concern. And there's more risk even than the ones that I have listed here. So just check that website out, and that can hopefully help you. Food defense, again, lots of free available resources. Both FDA and USDA FSIS has guidance documents. There are mitigation strategy tools. I don't know, for those of you that are USDA facility sites, that's a fairly new tool that I've found on the USDA website, which I'll show you on the next slide. And most of you hopefully have already, that are FDA, have already used the mitigation tools and the food defense page, that they have a lot of those resources available already. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to plan and train. We need to make sure that we have the adequate training. If you are FDA facility, I can't encourage you enough to attend a live public IAVA, Intentional Adulteration Vulnerability Assessment Training. It will help to improve your food defense program, and you'll be more prepared to understand what records you need to have in place if the FDA does show up doing their food defense checks, which their goal is to do more of those. Frontline employee training. What are their responsibilities when it comes to food defense? It's, we think about it is just letting the bad guy in the facility, making sure our doors are locked. But actually, it's that inside attacker, based on statistics, is more likely to cause an issue, a potential food defense issue within our organization. We need to make sure that we know where those key activity types are, such as bulk mixing tanks, isolated areas where employee could, if they wanted to cause a wide-scale public health harm, would have access and ability to do that. Now, stress testing is always the thing that gives most of us professionals stress because we have to come up with some sort of scenario to test the vulnerabilities and identify the source. Again, AI is a great tool. I've used it a few times to give me some ideas. Some of the things that they came up with is, making sure that, you're simulating a potential inside attacker or outside attacker for that matter, with maybe a chemical cage is unlocked and you see how long it takes either someone to go and lock it or to notify you. I've had unknown, unlabeled spray bottle. So you just put some water with some blue colored harmless dye, right? Nothing, nothing that actually is dangerous in case someone doesn't use it correctly. And see, again, does anybody notice it? What happens to it? Where does it go? Did anybody say anything about it? Suspicious behavior, maybe leaving a backpack in a vulnerable area. Again, that backpack maybe has a letter and it says, please, thank you for finding this, please return it, and see what happens. So we can really start challenging our food defense and meeting our GFSI compliance by not just checking that doors are locked and people aren't letting people in through pass cards, but we're really putting that simulation of real life events in a meaningful way. Also, please add cybersecurity threats to your program if you haven't already. This is expected also to be on the new round of GFSI standard updates, where we do need to assess those cyber attacks. More and more hackers are targeting US factories, farms, food companies, locking you out, even if you don't have very much computerized system. If you have access to all your formulas are in the system, if you can't access emails to get out purchase orders, everybody's using computers. So cybersecurity threats could be even at a higher level. If you have an automatic online CIP system or something that delivers a chemical, even an ingredient, a fortification. I've provided you guys some links there to dig in a little bit deeper on that as well. Here's that USDA tool. FDA has one, but for those of you that are USDA facilities, I'd encourage you to check this out. You can select different areas, and then it'll give you some proposed mitigation measures. Even our FDA people on this webinar, I thought they had a little bit more innovative mitigation measures than even the mitigation tool that the FDA is using. So it could be used unilateral. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, the food safety plans, they do need to be reviewed, refreshed. It's that time of the year where, we need to take a look at how successful we were in 2025. One of the biggest changes that might impact your hazard analysis is the 2.0 edition. So I'd encourage you guys to make sure at least one person in your HACCP team, if not the whole team, has been trained to 2.0. It is what we call a 7-pound baby. It used to be a 5-pound book, but now it's 7 pounds. Why? Because it's incorporated more information with the benefit of hindsight of post implementation of the preventive controls. Now FDA in partnership, FSPCA in partnership with the FDA has refreshed the hazard requirements. What have they done? Well, one of the big things is they are encouraging you to break out the hazards and not just group them all together if they're a similar bucket. And I have an example to share with you on the next page. Also, just improved understanding the implementation of preventive controls. We have evolved because we've had a chance to implement and really assess and see where our weaknesses still exist. Also, making sure your reassessments are not just, okay, yeah, everything's fine, we're good, check, here, everybody sign it. Take the effort to go through your process flow. Do you have all the inputs, outputs? That includes waste, returns, even at different time frames, looking at it from a second shift and third shift, not just that first shift where we tend to, all management is on. Record reviews. Do a record review like the USDA would, where they would take a look at 6 months worth of records. That could be customer complaints, HACCP records, your metal detection, really making sure to push that expectation of that assessment to more than just, well, I did the verification on a daily, weekly basis, but really looking at it holistically across many months to see if things have shifted, moved, to do that more proactive trend evaluation. And don't forget to document your reassessments, not just, yes, we did these things, but what did you look at? How many complaints have you had? How many non-conformance? How many near misses? Were there any industry challenges or other regulatory impacts? Here's that example of your Food Safety Plan 2.0. You can see that there's 2 biological concerns: pathogen growth, toxin formation, and then recontamination with environmental pathogens. A lot of times our old food safety programs, we lumped vegetative pathogens and we said Listeria and Salmonella was the risk, but the cause and effect were different. Even though the risk of that pathogen was still the same, the justification, the outcomes needed to really be separated out and be considered differently. So if you want to, dive more into this, that's what we're doing now with 2.0. Specifications. Our specification programs are definitely something that is kind of a sleeping giant. We are not always reassessing those specifications every year, but now it really, with the risk of heavy metals, contaminants, elevating maybe some of our validation testing, economic risks due to those tariffs and global changes, as we mentioned earlier. This is an area that we can't be asleep on anymore. We really need to push our suppliers to provide us up-to-date specs and start putting some challenge programs in place. I've given you guys some ideas around specification review questions. Do they include all the characteristics? I was reviewing a spec just the other day and it didn't have anything mentioned on its microbial risk. And it did have a significant issue, or it might be missing some quality aspects, some physical characteristics that are needed to ensure you don't have foreign material issues. Do you also have any new risk associated with that product? Does the product you're receiving match what you're getting? Are we really doing that checks and balance? Has it shifted? We can incorporate this with our supplier approval check and just make sure we have adequate procedures in place as well. With our specification program, the reason sometimes why we don't have a lot of hours dedicated to it is because we don't have a really good RACI. And a RACI is similar to kind of outlining who's ultimately responsible, who is the one doing the work, and who do I need to consult and inform. And those are usually different people. And in a specification program, we think about it on the back end, but actually it's the front end where R&D might be selecting those raw materials in the beginning, and they need to make sure that they're, communicating the expectations in the front half. We need to make sure someone's accountable that gets done. We then also have to incorporate those reviews, make any effort to consult. Maybe we even need to consult or inform purchasing or supply chain to any changes or requests for a C of A. So take a look at your spec program, dust it off a little bit, see if you have a proper RACI from selection of raw material all the way through that approval, and that individuals like the purchasing team know their role and responsibility as part of maintaining a good approved supplier program. And as I did before, I used the power of AI to kind of ask it to give me a step-by-step specification process. What does that process look like? What is my step-by-step? What would I need in terms of the activity, and who are those roles and responsibility? So it did a pretty decent job of kind of taking us through that stage gate process that we would have with a new product launch or a new ingredient change, and being able to not only have a RACI for the specification, but really for the entire change management process. That includes when does it get communicated, who needs to be trained, making sure we have version control. Many recalls, specifically around allergens, have resulted in because we did not have the spec program right, or we did not have that change management program really controlled. There's bypasses that have been able to take place. Okay, so with our training program, the Association of Talent Development does a report, I think every year, and presents a comprehensive overview of ultimately learning and development trends across organizations. One of the key metrics highlighted is that the average formal learning hours per employee has declined from 2024, from 2023. And this reduction really reflects the shift in priorities, that we're not prioritizing training. We don't change our delivery methods to make it effective training. The cost has risen as well. So we've got lower training, but costs going up to deliver these trainings. So we need to start adopting more advanced training technologies, specialized content, be able to budget. So that's a big one. If you're in the financial year, calendar year, and this is your budget year, definitely take a look at how you can get support in improving external training resources, your own internal training programs, and make sure you budget for it. As we know, training is fundamental in competency and being able to ensure that our food safety programs, systems, procedures are going to, have the action that's necessary to have the outcomes of food safety and quality. So what are we looking at? We need to elevate our skills assessment. What does that mean? It means we need to understand for each role, what are those skills they need for food safety competency? Have we done that hard work to really assess it? Does our existing training cover those skills? So once you've defined what those skills and takeaway are, then go back and check your training to see if it's there and where the gaps are. And then assess, well, when and how do we reinforce this? People only remember 10% of what they hear, 20% of what they've read, but 80% of what they see and do. So if we're going to reinforce it, we need to reinforce in different ways. Maybe we have our standard, on-demand training or our PowerPoint, but then we need to come back and reinforce it through hands-on demonstration, assessments, direct observations and monitoring of those behaviors to even assess if your training is effective. So in full circle, are we assessing that our training truly is meeting those specific skills? Are they effective? Do we need to reinforce them more? Do we have those key assessments that will allow us to have confidence that when we're not looking, they're going to do the right thing? Also, just looking at those competency quizzes, make sure to incorporate real world examples and decisions. What would you do in this scenario? You know, putting it into real life for them. You're not just assessing their competency so you can file away a quiz and go, yeah, we've done it, but you're assessing their understanding and how their behaviors or actions through that quiz will correlate into it being delivered post that training. Okay, so really think about this. Come back to this slide later when you're looking at your training program, and hopefully this gives you a little bit more insight on how you can improve. Training program. We're modernizing our trainings through communicating learning objectives as well up front. We need to improve visualization with real images. There's a lot of cool tools available out there that can be used to create trainings. Game-like elements such as points and badges, leaderboards and challenges. Why do we want to do this? Well, we have a workforce that also is used to gamified life. Everything is at the touch of your fingertips. So you want to incorporate those type of elements, and just that competitive nature can always help. Videos could be videos that you create in some of these platforms like we use in our on-demand training, or even videos of your actual facility and pictures of things that have gone wrong and things that are right, some before and after, right? Really bring it to life to modernize our training program. Okay, lastly, I wanted to cover our food safety culture. As I was mentioning earlier, GFSI, benchmark scheme, and all the standards are really going to be pushing us to move this farther along. We've only really scratched the surface on establishing food safety culture. We need to understand what affects the mindset and behavior of culture and why it's important. I would encourage you to sign up for food safety culture courses this year. We talk about that experience drives things, that engagement, even social pressure within departments, within different departments, the support, as well as do they understand the consequences of their action? Are we telling them, no, don't do this, but we're not saying why and what can happen? So when we look at food safety culture, we really need to not only just get that feedback, but we need to look at our programs through these lenses of mindset and behavior and how those can be different within the nature of what we're trying to accomplish, which is ultimately that they're risk aware and they would make good food safety decisions when presented with an issue. So some of the other takeaways for you guys is the questionnaire improvement. I've written a lot of food safety culture questionnaires over my life here, and we tend to do a lot of technical questions, but start looking at behavior-based questions. Again, you can use AI to ask specific, help you do those questions. Those behavior-based questions are things that we just talked about on the prior slide. How do you also vary the format, have some that are multiple choice, yes, no answers, and then some that are open comment field. Do you have the resources you need? What resources are you missing? If you had a crystal ball, what's the one thing you would improve in our organization? Start really pushing the boundaries of those questionnaires, not just repeating the same questions every year. Throw it out if you need to, and start a brand new one that really starts assessing behaviors. We have to evolve our food safety culture. We're going to start seeing more non-conformances, not only on our GFSI, but FDA is also, wanting us to really move this forward, and eventually they will be having more guidance and programs around it. The second thing in your food safety culture to get it prepped and ready for next year is to develop time-bound plans. This is specific deliverables that you're going to achieve, not to improve food safety, which is something we have, and those are our KPIs, but to improve food safety culture. How are we going to improve the behaviors, the mindset, the values of our team? And what does that look like? We need to create that opportunity to understand, which is the learning through the surveys and huddles and being able to get information through observations. But we also want to make sure those key performance indicators that we set aren't lagging, meaning those are outcome based. We need tactical, strategic KPIs around we are going to improve this aspect of our food safety culture program. Maybe it's we're going to improve training to provide more focus on the outcomes of the whys and what are the consequences. So you can have that as part of your food safety culture improvement plan. Not just we don't have non-conformances have reduced, or we haven't had recalls. Those are your food safety KPIs. We need KPIs related to food safety culture. And this is really what's going to be needing to be strengthened for your upcoming audit. And make sure you're developing activities for learning, continuous improvement, and be able to be comfortable with reevaluating and adjusting that program as necessary. I know that was a lot to go over. Sorry, I didn't give you guys a lot of time. So let's just take a look at a few of the questions that you all have. So I have one here, and there is a question field. So if you guys have a question, feel free to put that in. I have one here that about wholesale market and how those food safety regulations don't always match the specific industry, yet there are guidelines. Yes, that's a great point. I think sometimes, with the different regulations, we got the FDA food code for those wholesale retail markets, and then we have the preventive controls for our food manufacturing. We got the produce safety for our produce. We have USDA requirements for meat and poultry. You can take that information and that guidance and being able to apply it on a risk-based scenario. I'd love to know more about what you struggle with, but the tools can be applied across the industry, from all the way from farm to retail. It's just putting it in a kind of a risk-based fashion. Okay, let's see. What else here? Other questions? Okay, so go ahead and just put in the chat field, since we have just a couple minutes. Has anybody used AI successfully, and how have you gone about using it? Let's give you guys a few seconds. And then you can see here too, we will have a post-webinar survey. It'd be great to get guys' feedback, as well as this QR code is the ability to sign up in advance for free webinars so you don't miss any future webinars that we have. We're going to have one with SQF right before the end of the year. That's going to be actually on food safety culture, I believe. So sign up and make sure that you're already being registered for these events. Okay. For some reason, maybe it's not working. Okay, here's another one. For FSMA 204 deadline, so yeah, it's been extended for the 30 months, so it's not 2026 anymore. I don't know the date exactly, but 2028, that I think is right. Is that the 30 months? So yes, it has been pushed out. So take a look at the FDA's website to learn more about that. Also with your trade associations, they're doing a lot to try to help support this and drive progress. Also, just to let you guys know, our 2026 training calendar is now open for registration, and we do have a special savings that we're running right now. And we, if you want to just grab that food safe, that code. And if you guys need any other trainings, audits, or consulting, this information will be provided in the slide deck. And so let's see here. Yes, I think we have a whole bunch of questions that have just come in. Sorry, there is a delay in the GoToWebinar question box, and now they just all came in a hurry. Yes, the slides are going to be made available as well. No problem. Oh, thank you, Morgan. So you use AI to write SOPs and outline programs. I've used a little bit for SOP writing, but I haven't got fully in that yet. So I'm interested to see how it can really do that. This is a good one. Elizabeth says they organize CAPAs and get ideas for corrective action to help prevent reoccurrence and conduct more thorough 5 why analysis. Oh, that's a great tool. I'll be interested in seeing more on that as well. And Kimberly, they've used AI for market research and problem solving. Excellent. Well, thank you guys for sharing that. That's really helpful. We'll continue to get better at it and pushing the boundaries of how we challenge and verify our programs and develop them, not only through using tools, but also just continuous improvement mindset and getting us farther along that maturity model of our programs. Excellent. Well, thank you all. That concludes today's webinar. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we will send you this deck tomorrow. Thank you all.